50 years ago today, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution gave women the right to vote. On this anniversary, a militant minority of women's liberationists was on the streets across the country to demand equal employment for women, care centers for mothers, child abortions for anyone who wants them, and general equality between women and men. Here's how the demonstrations looked, starting with Bob Shackney in New York.
Women's liberation now!
It turned out there really weren't a lot of would-be liberated women willing to stop their work for the day in New York. Early demonstrations tended to be small, and the onlookers were by no means always sympathetic.
What do you want? Quality. You don't know what the hell you want. We don't want you. Neither do I want you.
A few thousand did gather at City Hall to hear and cheer author Betty Friedan, the principal organizer of today's activities.
On behalf of the unprecedented coalition of women that today has called this strike to confront the unfinished business of our equality, women young and old, women black and white, women students, women grandmothers who fought for the original right to vote, women Republicans, Democrats, socialists, young radical women, establishment women, rich women who know that all women are poor, housewives, professional women, women who are famous, but no woman makes it alone, and that's all women are equal and free.
My protection from the rain outside made me feel love like the old days, yeah. But I can't blame you, baby, it's me that's done wrong.
In 1960, the FDA approved an oral contraceptive pill, more popularly known as birth control. Early pioneers of the pill can be dated not too far back to Margaret Sanger, who openly discussed and advocated for the pill. The pill granted women more reproductive freedom, especially during the 60s and 70s' rampant new idea of sex for pleasure. The pill only cost $10.80 per month. Betty Friedan, the same woman from the video, made her national debut with the publication of The Feministic Mystique in 1963. After interviewing her fellow classmates, she conducted detailed research into the problem that has no name. She defined mystique as the worthlessness women feel in roles that require them to intellectually and emotionally rely on their husbands. She later concluded that women are victims to false systems that require them to find their identity and meaning in lives of their husbands and children. Her book became a bestseller, bringing light to women's struggle and setting the groundwork for further protest and change. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was enacted, outlining majorly discrimination against African Americans and women. The legislation consisted of 11 titles, each dealing with a different topic, such as desegregation of schools to employment. Now, the National Organization for Women was founded in 1966. Coming as no shock, Betty Friedan is the president. Now organized many protests for women's rights. For example, the intro clip was from a march on Washington, receiving national attention to the women's liberation movement. In 1968, Now busted onto the national scene at the Miss America beauty pageant. In protest, they filled the Freedom trash cans with objects of oppression such as bras, high heels, girdles, and Playboy.
Come so easily. This doesn't have to end in tragedy.
Women's rights, or like some historians like to call it, the second feminism movement, reached a new level in the 1970s. In 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment is introduced and passed by Congress. Despite support, the states do not ratify the bill. Conservative women opposed it because they believed it undermined their role as housewives and encouraged the men to abandon their responsibilities as a provider. In the same year, Nixon passed Title IX, a civil rights law prohibiting discrimination in education and in activities receiving federal funding. This gave women increased opportunity in athletics and in admission into college. Before Title IX, many female students could not stay out past midnight or take certain courses like auto mechanics. In 1973, the very controversial Supreme Court case, Jane Roe v. Henry Wade, District Attorney of Dallas County. Based on the 14th Amendment, the right to privacy extended to a woman's right to have an abortion. This caused a major divide between the pro-choice and the pro-life. The pro-choice argued women have a right to make decisions concerning their own reproductive organs. The other side argued life begins at conception. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed in 1974, prohibiting credit discrimination based on race, sex, religion, etc. More importantly, this gave married women the right to own a credit card in their name. This is a big milestone from women having no control over their finances earlier in the century. The U.S. Armed Forces Military Academy in 1975 opened its doors to women, requiring weapon training to be mandatory. The Army also increased recruiting for women due to the armed forces eliminating the draft. The feminist movement does not stop here. It pushes on through the 80s, where women gained political power. Sandra Day O'Connor in 1980 became the first woman nominated to the Supreme Court. Other opportunities arise for women, such as positions as lawyers, politicians, or corporate executives. The wave did not stop in the U.S., but moved worldwide. In 1983, France passes the Equality of Men and Women law. Japan in 1986 enacted an equal employment opportunity law. I see nothing but better things in the future to come.
When sky blue gets dark enough to see the colors of the city lights, a trail of ruby red and diamond white hits like a sun.